Welcome to the Motu booth here at NAMM 2015 on Saturday afternoon. I must say that I've seen Saturday afternoons that were a lot louder than this, so perhaps we can be grateful for that. Where's my signal here? Hold on. I'm Dave, and we're giving a very nice selection of demonstrations today. David Doss was just showing us workflow techniques with Digital Performer. We have Matt Lapointe. He's here showing off our Mach 5 Universal Sampler. I'm doing two different demonstrations today. I'm talking about our new AVV audio interfaces. But right now, I have the privilege and the pleasure to introduce the latest update for our flagship audio MIDI sequencing software, and that's Digital Performer version 9. And we're going to call this a sneak peek. We're not going to give everything away that's going to be in the DP9 upgrade, but there will be some very, very cool stuff. And we're close enough to releasing of the software that we thought, okay, well, we'll tease you a little bit and show you some of the cool stuff that's going to be coming up there. So, no further ado, let's jump on in. Now, anytime we... One, two, there we go. Anytime we have a major upgrade of Digital Performer, we have to look at who we're doing the upgrade for, who is going to be interested in paying for a software upgrade. Now, most of the people, well, there we go, we have our long-term friends, power users of the software, and the kind of features that they're looking for are workflow enhancements. They're already using the software, they're already deep into the capabilities of what DP can do, and they're looking for subtle, fine-tuned refinements of the software. But at the same time, we're always interested in attracting new customers, younger customers, and if you're going to ask people to buy the upgrade, you have to give them something that's really, really attractive. So we want to see nice big features in there as well. There's something that you hadn't expected, some really cool stuff. So you see a real range of enhancements. And I'm going to start off, as I take you through DP9, I'm going to start off with little things, we'll work up to big things. So for example, I'll go up to the project menu, and I've got a choice for add track. And here I can add MIDI tracks, audio tracks, instrument tracks, different types of tracks, but I can only add one type of track at a time with this command. New command is create tracks. This opens up a window where we can choose track types. So maybe I'll choose a MIDI track, and I'll say assign that to this existing output. I'll say add MIDI tracks in, and give me 5 MIDI tracks, for example. And I'd like to also get some audio tracks in there, so let's add some audio. That's a mono audio track. Let's add a stereo audio track. Maybe I want to add in master fader. But I can set up the template ahead of time. What tracks do I need for my template? And then I'll just click OK, and all of those new tracks have been added into the sequence, either at the bottom of the existing track list or immediately after any pre-selected track. So we'll call that the Track Wizard, a real easy way for adding in complete selections of any combination of types of tracks that you would like to do. Let's take a look at the MIDI graphic editor. Now here we see MIDI notes. In this area below, we see two types of controller data. There's pitch bend information, and there's some controller 7 volume information. We can only look at MIDI in the MIDI graphic editor, so I'll switch over to the sequence editor where we can see MIDI and audio together. And here when I look at the MIDI information, I say show me the note velocities. They're superimposed over the notes. If I say show me the volume information, that's superimposed over the notes. I should say show me pitch bend automation, that's all there. And you know that when you're working with MIDI information, perhaps you're animating a virtual instrument or some sort of effect, you might be using 10, 20 different types of MIDI controllers. And if all that information is superimposed over top of each other, it becomes somewhat spaghetti-like. So a new feature that we've added in are automation lanes. And what we're doing here is, this looks like separate tracks, but they're not. They're lanes for this original MIDI track. And we can hide or show the different types of automation lanes that we like. So we can see only the automation data that we want. Very easy to work between different types of data. All right, I'd like to go take a look at my volume controller information, so I'll go down there, I'll show that lane. If I want to collapse the lanes back into the track. I could do that, go back to my note view. Works the same way with audio. I'll insert some volume information into the audio track. I'll insert some send volume information into the track. And again, the automation shows up superimposed over the waveform, but if I say show the lanes, then I can do exactly that. I can show or hide any combination of automation in MIDI or audio tracks. So automation lanes, a new feature for DP9. Now while we're in the waveform editor here, go back to our soundbite view. Let's make the track a little bit bigger. Let's scroll down, and I've got some audio here. Kind of looks like a drum beat. Well, that's because this is the room mic or the overhead mic of the drum set. And we look at this information, and what do we see? Well, we see time going from left to right, and we see amplitude, right? This is louder, this is softer. So by looking at this waveform, before we even listen to it, I know that there's some sort of rhythmic pattern here, but I don't know much else about it. I don't know much else about what I'm actually going to hear when I press play, and let's do that. So now we know that there's a crash symbol at the beginning of the phrase, and then there's sounds like a kick and a snare pattern after that. So let's go up to this menu and select the view mode, and we have a choice of looking at the waveform, or the spectrogram, or both. We'll start off with both. And if I want to change the track color, maybe enhance that a little bit, enhance the contrast. Maybe I'd like to look at just the spectrogram itself. That's by view mode to say show me just the spectrogram. What the spectrogram is showing us is it's showing us amplitude, right? That's the darker parts. It's showing us time, left to right, and it's showing us frequency, high frequency to lower frequency. So now we can see that simple crash. We see kick, snare, kick, snare. So now we can see what's going on in the audio, not just in terms of amplitude and time, but also frequency response. For all you Motu Mackers out there, all our user group people who been talking about DP9, we've been showing it for a couple of days here. I was reading the Motu Mac user forums last night, and somebody said, yes, but can you edit the audio while it's in the spectrogram mode? And the answer is, yes, you can. All right. So pass that good word along. All right, now I'm going to open up a sidebar window. And what I'm doing here is I'm working inside one consolidated window for Digital Performer. That is very handy for this demonstration because obviously we have one screen. Or if you're on a laptop or an iMac computer, then you're working with one screen, and it can be very handy to do most of your work inside Digital Performer inside a single consolidated window. But it will make the point that if you have multiple monitors and want to spread your windows out to multiple monitors, that's certainly your choice as well. Very flexible user interface. But now that I've opened up this sidebar window, I'm going to use the sidebar to show something new, and this is project notes. Now we've had track notes for some time. Track notes, you can put in information, just write in information about a specific track. But project notes is just a little notepad that's specific to this Digital Performer session. So when did we start recording the session? Who were the musicians on the session? How much did we pay the engineer? Did we get bagels or muffins that day for breakfast? What do we need to do? What do we need to add in? What were the settings on the guitar amplifier? All this information could be written down and just be part of the project notes. It's a handy little feature there. Now I'm going to change to the chunks window, and this is a feature that's been in the program for a long, long time, but it's still one of the most powerful and unique features of Digital Performer, and this is the ability to have completely independent and separate sequences inside a single session file. So what I've just done there is I've switched to an entirely different sequence, because this sequence has a really nice version of some notation. Now the way that notation works in Digital Performer is we have MIDI information in the tracks, and MIDI can be represented as notation. When you're talking about notation, right, you might think about what is the difference between a C sharp and a D flat? What is the difference between a quarter note and a dotted quarter note? These are interpretations that are made in the process of transcription. You play a piece of music, you give it to a human being, you say, write this music out as sheet music, and that human being makes decisions on whether it's a C sharp or a D flat or a quarter note or a dotted quarter note. And something that Digital Performer does very, very well is transcription. Digital Performer is using an expert system to represent the MIDI as readable musical notation. So we see that this is very clean notation here. It's not quantized, it's not hard quantized. Digital Performer is quantizing the view to give us a nice, clean, rhythmic notation. If we play into a grand staff, up and down the keyboard of a piano, Digital Performer uses a moving split point, so your left hand is always in the bass clef and your right hand is in the treble clef. Things like note spelling. DP does a great job of all of this. But there are things that Digital Performer doesn't do in terms of notation. You can't have multiple page views, for example. You can't change the note heads of the notation. So there may be some cases that you want to take the notation from Digital Performer into a dedicated graphics program, something like Sibelius or Finale, for example, and continue to work on your music in this graphics program so that you can do what you want from music publishing there. How do we transfer the file from Digital Performer to a notation program? Now, the way that it used to be done was with a standard MIDI file. But when you turn this beautiful notation into a standard MIDI file, you lose a bunch of information. MIDI can't tell the difference between a C sharp and a D flat. Sibelius has an import music XML function. We'll go to the desktop. There's the XML file that I just created. I'm going to ask Sibelius to open that file. We'll just use all of the default settings for Sibelius. And now if we look at the file as imported into Sibelius, we see that the rhythmic notation is exactly the same. The dynamics markings have been brought over, lyrics have been brought over. If you notate it into a grand staff, you're going to get the proper hand splitting. So now this is a way of exporting the notation from Digital Performer into another program and keeping all of Digital Performer's very, very nice transcription capabilities. So I'll get rid of that for a moment. We'll close this up. Switch back to my original sequence. And let's just have a quick recap of what I've shown you so far. The Tracks Wizard, add multiple types of tracks with a single command. Automation lanes for both MIDI and audio tracks. Spectral display for audio waveforms in the tracks. Project Notepad, export notation as XML. There's a great deal more going on here. MX4 is a virtual instrument that Motu introduced a few years ago, and it's a synthesizer. MX4 was sold separately from Digital Performer, and up to now it's remained a 32-bit plugin. But we're going to include MX4 with DP9. It's been updated to be a 64-bit plugin. And let's take a quick look at MX4. You modeled the circuit diagram in software. Every single capacitor, resistor, vacuum tube, transistor, whatever's going on inside that circuit board is modeled in the software. So now we have a theoretical model of what the hardware does, but then we take the actual piece of hardware and we run signals through it, and we analyze what happens to the signal when it goes through that hardware. We tweak the knobs, move the knobs around, and we compare the response of the actual audio hardware to what our software is doing, and we fine-tune the software so that it's doing the same thing as that original piece of analog hardware. So for example, the LA2A was this optical compressor that was designed in 1965, I think it first came out. It was handmade back then. So what we found was that every single LA2A optical compressor sounds a little different from the next one. So when we made our LA2A plugin, our Masterworks leveler, we did 4 different vintages of that. So a new plugin that's going to be in DP9 will be the 1176 compressor. All these different compressors, the LA2A, the 1176, they're all flavors, and as an audio engineer, you reach for the right paintbrush or the right spice that you want to use in your mix. The first time I was in a recording studio, a decent recording studio, I'm a bass player, they said, all right, we're going to plug your bass into the 1176. I'd never seen one before. I played my bass, I was like, wow, that is a really cool sound. It just evened it out. So the 1176 is a go-to compressor for bass, kick drum, snare drum, vocals, acoustic guitar if you like. And the 1176 will be included in DP9 as a plugin. As a musician, audio engineer, I've always been a huge fan of Electro-Harmonix. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid, I couldn't afford MXR stomp boxes. Electro-Harmonix was my go-to brand, and I probably had every one they made at some point. I had the electric finger and the big muff and all these things. Electro-Harmonix makes beautiful effects pedals, and this is an Electro-Harmonix pedal called the Polyphonic Octave Generator. In my experience, this is the best tracking octave generator for either bass or guitar that I've used. And we've modeled the Polyphonic Octave Generator. That'll be included in DP9. I'll bet you everybody here knows who Craig Anderton is. Craig Anderton is a musician, he's a writer, editor, he's an inventor. Back in the 1970s, I used to get my subscription to Guitar Player magazine, and the first column I would read in Guitar Player would be Craig Anderton's column. I did every modification to my guitar. He would have all these different circuit diagrams. He published a book called Electronic Projects for Musicians. I made half of the projects that were in the book, learned a lot about electronics from Craig, and one of the devices that Craig described in his Electronic Projects for Musicians was the Quadrafuzz. So this is our homage to Craig Anderton's design. The Quadrafuzz is a unique piece of hardware in that it takes the incoming guitar signal and splits it into 4 frequency bands, and then does separate distortion circuits for each of those frequency bands. So you can fine-tune the distortion depending on the frequency range of the guitar. The other thing that the Quadrafuzz does is it uses LEDs for its overdrive circuit. If you ever get into a conversation with Craig, ask him about LEDs. He'll be telling you, oh, put an LED in your guitar. It's the coolest limiter that you can have built into the guitar. There's different ways of doing distortion. Distortion could be done by overloading vacuum tubes. Distortion could be done by overloading transistors. But the type of distortion that you get when you overload LEDs is this unique, sweet singing distortion. So we've modeled the Quadrafuzz as a new plugin in DP9. And the last plugin I'll be showing you will be a version of the Mutron 3. I definitely couldn't afford this when I was a kid. This was high-end product. There's a company that's still making a version of the Mutron now, but this is an auto-wah. Stevie Wonder, Pete Townsend, Jerry Garcia, distinct, very distinct sound. And I'm so pleased. I'm a big Jerry Garcia fan. I'm so pleased that we've modeled the Mutron and put that into DP. So let's take a look at some of these. It's tight up here. I'll see if I can do this without knocking everything over. Without banging the camera around. This is not part of the bass, by the way. All right, let's see if I can get my bass signal going through here. So my bass is plugged directly into the 1248 interface. And the only processing that I'm doing to the bass right now is this live stage plugin. This is included with DP. And what this does is convolution modeling of different bass cabinets. So for example, right now I'm going through an SVT cabinet. Let's take it into a single 18-inch speaker. Let's try a different microphone. Let's go back to our SVT cabinet. So what this plugin is doing is it's giving me the cabinet emulation, so I have just that bit much more realistic of a bass sound coming through my recording. And now I'm going to open up a plugin called the Micro B, and this is our version of the Polyphonic Octave Generator. And I'll start off with just the bass sound. Let's give it a little bit more gain here. Actually, no. If I want gain, another way, a great way of getting some gain, before I get into that Polyphonic Octave Generator, let's bring up a compressor. Here is our 1176 compressor. It's not just about making it loud or soft, it's about controlling the dynamics. So you can see the gain reduction that's going on as we send the bass through that. Alright, so there's our 1176 working on the bass sound. Now we're bringing the octave generator, and let's bring in the upper octave first. We hear a little bit of a filter going on. Let's turn that filter down for now. But I've got the upper octave, I'll pull that down a little bit. Now let's bring in the sub-octave. And as a bass player, I'm telling you that that tracking is dead on. And then for the synthesis element, we'll bring in some square wave here. We'll bring that filter back in, push up the resonance, set our start and end frequency for the sweep. Adjust the trigger sensitivity. Sweep rate. And that is a monster bass synthesizer sound. Now check it out. See if I can do this gracefully here. I've been controlling the parameters of the Micro B using my mouse, but I've got an Akai controller keyboard down here, and I've got sliders on the Akai controller, and you can see that I can move those sliders. I'm not using the mouse at this point, and I can control parameters inside the plugin with remote MIDI messages. This is a new function in DP9 also. I'll go to my project menu, scroll down to consoles, and I have a learn controller command. And of course that can be invoked with a key command. You don't need to go to the menu for that. But if I choose learn controller and then click on any parameter in the mixing board, inside of a plugin, any parameter inside of DP, and then go wiggle that external controller, then the controller will learn the command that's supposed to be going on. And the way that this works is we're using something that's actually been in DP for a while, and this is the custom consoles. Custom consoles work as translators. So we've got MIDI coming in from the Akai controller, and the destination of that MIDI is, in this case, my bass audio track. And on the bass audio track, we want that MIDI controller to come in to the Micro B and control whatever parameter we want. So you don't need to have to know how all of this stuff works. You can just invoke learn controller, click on the parameter that you want, wiggle the knob on your controller keyboard or step on the pedal on your footboard, and it'll do all of the work. But if you want to get into some really custom assignments, maybe I'd like to have a single fader on my controller that when I move it, it changes one parameter in one direction and a different parameter in the other direction. It inverts the parameters. A lot of choices. Limit the controller range. A lot of choices in here by using the custom consoles.